Besides the TV show, Ninjago has multiple different forms of media that are considered canon to the main series, with the most recent examples being the Garmadon comic and the Spinjitzu Brothers book series. Books and comics aren't the only canon media outside of the TV show, as did you know that there's actually a puppet show that is canon to the series? Well, the show creators consider it to be canon, despite it having a lot of issues, so I guess if you like it enough you could consider it canon. This puppet show in question is the Ninjago The Realm of Shadows live show that premiered back in 2015 at Legoland Malaysia and was later shown in Legoland Japan, which I didn't even know existed before researching this video. I guess you truly do learn something new every day. Like yesterday, I learned that I am several thousands in debt. The show begins with a short scene of Sensei Wu addressing the audience and tasking them with delivering a teapot of traveler's tea and a mysterious egg to the ninja, before the stage transforms into a monastery, with Kai and Nia having a short training segment. Kai and Nia take notice of the audience's gifts, which leads to Kai dropping the mysterious egg. Upon impact, the egg hatches and out flies a small dragon Nia calls Bandit. After Kai calls the dragon an idiot,
I wonder what kind of dragon he is!
A slow dragon from the looks of it.
the stage once again transforms, but this time into a shadowy temple, with the villain of the show being revealed to be Klaus, who plans to use Bandit to take over Ninjago. After Klaus name drops the show,
plunged into a realm of shadows.
He said it!
it cuts back to Kai and Nia with Bandit, as the three of them are walking through the Windows XP background, when the Destiny's Bounty flies down from the sky and the two siblings board the ship, with the other ninja making their first appearance in the show. While the ninja are on the bounty, Zen explains to the audience and the other ninja that Bandit is a yin-yang dragon, a dragon that can either grow to be a light dragon or a shadow dragon, depending on the way it's raised. Shortly after this explanation, the bounty is attacked by Klaus's shadow minions. The ninja fight off the shadow minions, but unfortunately Bandit is taken by them. This then prompts Kai and Nia to jump after the shadow minions, landing in the toxic bogs. Down in the toxic bogs, Kai and Nia must solve a pretty simple puzzle in order to open the gates to Klaus's temple hideout. Upon entering the temple, Kai and Nia walk in on Klaus beginning a ceremony to turn Bandit into a shadow dragon. The two ninja attempt to save Bandit, but Klaus has already begun to turn the small dragon into a shadow dragon. Thankfully, however, the power of friendship is all it takes to cancel the transformation, and transform Bandit into a light dragon. Klaus is defeated and flees the scene. The temple is turned into crystal right before the rest of the ninja appear. Some could say that it was, crystallized. Okay, you can unsubscribe now. The ninja then realized that the teapot of Traveler's Tea was destroyed in the battle, meaning the audience has no way of returning home. Lloyd comes up with the idea of combining all the ninja's powers to send the audience home, which somehow actually works, returning the audience back to Sensei Wu in the same location as the beginning of the show. Sensei Wu speaks to the audience for a short moment before the show finally comes to an end. Now that we've gone through a recap of the show, let's start actually discussing it, by starting off with the fact that the show voice actors actually reprise their respective roles, which really surprised me the first time I watched this. You would think that for a show that was only ever done in 2 countries, they would just use replacement actors, but no. They actually went and forced the voice actors from the show to do it, which is great and does kinda help this feel canon to the main series. It does make me wonder, however, that if they're able to get the voice actors from the show to do this, then why didn't they do the same with the video games? I guess it could be because video games do tend to require a lot more voice lines, such as interacting with other characters and just standing still and saying something quirky. I imagine LEGO didn't want to pay that much, so instead went with a brand new and less expensive cast for all the video games. They may have skimped out on the video games, they sure didn't mind pumping a good few dollars into this show, as their production value is honestly fantastic. The entire show is done on a digital background which changes depending on the scene, and at first I thought it was going to be incredibly cheap, but to my surprise it looked pretty good. I really shouldn't be too surprised that this show had such a big production value, as watching an interview from when the show first premiered, it said that this show had been in the works for nearly 2.5 years, meaning this was probably being worked on as far back as 2013 or even 2012. I'm assuming a lot of those 2 years went into training the puppeteers and making the puppets themselves, because even though the puppeteers are clearly on stage, they all do a fantastic job of blending into the background and letting whatever character they're controlling feel like they're actually moving on their own. Sometimes. This leads us on to the actual puppets, and I am by no means a puppeteer or puppet expert, but I sure can recognize that they put a lot of effort into creating these puppets. Even their mouths and eyebrows are able to be moved. I have to say though that the Jay puppet does look slightly strange. The hair doesn't really look that much like the actual hairpiece used for Jay, but it's not that much of a big deal. It could have been worse, just look at Cole from the Ninjago section in Legoland. He doesn't even have the proper hairpiece. Jay isn't the only puppet I have problems with. Zane and Cole are just straight up inaccurate, with Zane not being titanium and Cole not being a ghost as he would have been in 2015. These two continuity errors must have come from this being in the works since 2013, back when those still were human, or at least looked human in Zane's case. Even if some of them are flawed, they're all still fantastically made. These puppets are actually our first official look at the day they parted suits, a whole year before the special was released. The last puppet I want to talk about would be the main star of the show, Bandit. Its whole later Shadow Dragon story really makes me think of Bandit being a Pokemon, with two different evolutions, just like Solgaleo and Lunala from Pokemon Sun and Moon, which are also about light and shadow. Out of all the backgrounds and settings this show takes place in, I'd have to say that my favourite would have to be the Woo Room from the beginning and end. I just really like all the Easter eggs they managed to cram in. On the walls we have photos of Shade, Tox, Gravis, and Belobo. I have no idea as to why Woo would have photos of these random elemental masters on his walls, but they sure are there. Also there in the walls is for some reason the Sword of Fire and the Scythe of Quakes, which I'm assuming is just them reusing the assets of the Sword of Fire and Scythe of Quakes to represent some generic background weapons and not the actual golden weapons. The middle of the room is where all my favourite references come from. First we have this small platform where Woo stands on, which looks to have one of the Ninjago comics open on a stack of paper. Beside that there is a recreation of the Helmet of Shadows. And on this side we have these decapitated Sylphidine heads on top of glass containers. I'm sure these are meant to represent the different venoms belonging to each Sylphidine tribe, but to me they just look like Pez dispensers. Behind the platform there's this shelf full of Easter eggs. All the way at the top there's a model of the Falcon which would actually be able to move. Beside that there's a framed photo of the Bounty from episode 22 with the hot air balloon attachment, which is an odd choice. Why not have a photo of the regular Bounty? I suppose it does tie into one of the other Easter eggs, which is an image of the Star Teeth, featured in the same episode. Again, a pretty weird thing to reference, but I shall allow it. Starting from the left of the shelf, we have a recreation of the Blade Cup, and then beside that we once again have a decapitated head, but this time for Samakai, which, like the Falcon, had the ability to move by opening and closing its mouth, which is really neat that they managed to get that to work. Underneath Samakai's head, there are the 4 fang blades, and all the way on the top right, we have a small model of Chen's helmet. All of these Easter eggs are really cool, but they all pale in comparison to my favourite of the bunch, this miniature python trapped behind bars. This just looks so funny to me. Sure, it's a greatly made puppet, but something about it just looks so stupid. With him being behind a set of bars on a shelf, it feels like Wu is keeping Pythor as a pet. Overall, this live show is really well put together, and I wish it wasn't exclusive to Legoland Malaysia and Legoland Japan. But then again, it sure does look quite expensive and tedious to perform. I have so much respect for the puppeteers who had to do this for like a week straight. Making sure the dialogue matched up with the mouth movements must have been a real pain. This show does make me wonder what they could have done for other seasons of the show. A bike stunt show makes perfect sense for Sons of Gamelon. Either that or they could resurrect the founder of LEGO from the dead. And hey, there's always Seabound where they could have literally just drowned someone.